I can cook. I can clean. I can be quiet, she whispered. He opened his door, and somehow his life, Belcaris, 8 was dead. What once had been a bustling mining colony now stretched out in broken silence. Gray metal corridors twisted by time, processing towers half collapsed and buried in snowdrifts. The air was sharp and thin. You could see your breath, even indoors. The sky hung low and colorless, dimmed by a broken atmosphere and the aftershocks of orbital detonation from a war no one remembered clearly anymore. This place had been abandoned for nearly a decade. Leonard Thorne was one of the few who stayed behind. He wasn't born here. He came during the riots, sent with the Colonial Safety Commission to restore power and run diagnostics. But the commission left. The pay ran out. The syndicates took over. People started disappearing. When the last shuttle pulled away from the landing pads, Leonard was still on the ground, standing in the freezing wind, watching it shrink into the clouded sky. He never explained why he didn't go. He just said it was easier to fix things when no one was breaking them anymore. Now in his early 40s, Leonard lived in a reinforced storage unit buried under a collapsed tunnel section. Every surface was patched with scrap, old hull plating, scavenged pipework, broken solar grids. The workshop smelled like old coolant and cold metal. He kept to himself, surviving by salvaging tech, fixing filtration units for nearby outposts, and occasionally trading spare fuses and old components to distant runners who came through once every few months. He didn't expect visitors. That evening, Leonard was returning from the southern ridge, where he'd stripped a derelict drone station of its circuit boards. He carried them in a worn canvas sack slung over one shoulder. The wind was biting. Even with his insulated undersuit and scavenger armor, he could feel the cold trying to sneak through. His gloves had lost most of their padding. His fingertips stung. His breath came in short bursts. The snow was deeper than usual, reaching his knees as he trudged the last 100 meters toward home. His boots crunched over the ice, sharp and deliberate. He didn't waste motion. He knew this terrain. He knew the patterns of falling debris, the sounds of metal groaning in the wind, the way echoes could trick your ears into hearing voices that weren't there. When he reached the door, he dropped the sack beside the keypad. It buzzed weakly. The panel sparked. Again, he cursed under his breath, reached under the housing, and rerouted the power manually with a multi-tool. The door finally hissed open. Warm air hit his face, carrying the scent of soldered wires and synthetic oil. He stepped in. The door slid closed behind him. Inside, the air was still. Low lights buzzed faintly from ceiling panels. A heater hummed in the corner, struggling to keep the space above freezing. Tools were spread across a metal workbench. A solar battery disassembled halfway. Empty tins stacked near a portable stove. One blanket, one cot, one man. Leonard tossed his gloves on the bench and pulled off his coat. His arms ached from the cold. He was about to pour hot water from the thermal flask when he heard it. A knock. Not a loud one. Barely there. 3 soft taps. He turned. That didn't make sense. No one came here. No one even knew how to reach this level unless they followed his signal relay trail, and that was encrypted. He reached for the pistol under the workbench, checked the charge, and moved to the door. The external camera feed was dark, glitched with static and interference. Another knock. Slightly louder this time. He didn't speak, didn't call out. He just placed his hand on the locking panel and opened the door slowly. She collapsed into him. No warning. A limp weight folded forward against his chest, bare skin, ice cold, trembling. Leonard caught her instinctively, stepping back to keep both of them from falling. His pulse kicked up. He looked down. Not human. Her skin was slate blue, veined with faint silver lines that shimmered under the overhead lights. Her body was half covered by crude wraps, strips of mesh and dirty canvas tied around her chest, and waist-like makeshift clothing. One shoulder was exposed, the flesh marked by faint bruises and a golden sigil etched near the collarbone. Her hair was long, tangled, white with a slight iridescent sheen. It stuck to her face, matted with melted snow. She was barefoot. One foot had blood frozen around the arch. Her lips moved. Cracked. Dry. Barely audible. I can cook. I can clean. I can be quiet. Her voice cracked. Just don't send me back. Then she lost consciousness. Leonard didn't move for several seconds. He stared at her, heart racing, mind scrambling to process what just happened. She was Valkyrie, one of the bonded worker species trafficked off-world before the war. Rare now. Most were either claimed by syndicates or sold to colonies with no oversight. If she was here alone, half naked in a storm, it meant she escaped. He looked down the corridor outside. Empty. No tracks. No sound but the wind. He pulled her inside. The door sealed behind them. She barely weighed anything. He carried her across the room and set her gently on the cot, kicking aside his thermal blanket and wrapping it around her body. Her skin was ice cold. Her fingers twitched uncontrollably. Her breathing was shallow but steady. He moved fast, lit the emergency burner, pulled a field heater closer, laid a warming pack across her stomach. He didn't say anything. His mind was sharp, methodical, focused on keeping her alive. Only once she started breathing more evenly did he sit down on the floor beside her. He studied her face. She looked young, maybe late 20s in appearance, but the Valkyrie aged slower. Her features were fine, symmetrical, but there was a tightness in her jaw, even unconscious. A hardness behind the curve of her brow, as if her body had learned to stay ready for pain. He leaned back against the bench, eyes never leaving her. This was bad. If someone was tracking her, if the syndicates were involved, he was now implicated. They didn't forget debts. They didn't tolerate thieves. If they found her here, they'd raise the whole sector to make an example. Still, he hadn't hesitated. He could have shut the door, could have left her. Didn't. She stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, purple, slit-pupiled, glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked at him. No fear, no surprise, just exhausted awareness. "You're safe," Leonard said quietly. "You're inside. No one followed you." She tried to sit up. He stopped her with a raised hand. "Don't move yet. You got frostbite. You passed out at my door." Her lips trembled. "How long?" "An hour. Maybe less." "Did you see anyone outside?" "No." She exhaled and let her head fall back. He watched her chest rise and fall under the blanket. She wasn't bleeding heavily. Her body had small bruises, abrasions. Nothing fatal, but the way she clutched the blanket said more than words. She wasn't just cold. She was terrified. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ravel." "You a settler?" "No." She hesitated. "Bonded. Merchant syndicate. Escaped 3 days ago." That explained the brand. Leonard rubbed his jaw, glancing toward the security monitor again. Still nothing. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "This isn't a trade. I'm not one of them." She didn't answer right away, but her body softened slightly under the blanket. "I can work," she said. "I can cook, fix small things. I don't take up much room. You're not here to work. Then what am I here for?" Leonard stood, moving to the workbench. He picked up a fresh water pouch and handed it to her. "You're here because you would have died otherwise." "That's it." Ravel took the water slowly. Her hands shook. "I thought you were going to shut the door," she whispered. "I thought about it." A long pause. Then, "Why didn't you?" Leonard looked at her. Not angry, not smiling, just tired. "I don't know," he said. "I guess I didn't want to hear someone die on my doorstep." She didn't reply. He stepped back, pulled a second blanket from the hook, and laid it beside her. "You'll sleep here tonight. Stay warm. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what to do." As he moved toward his cot, she spoke again, quiet, but with more strength this time. "If they track me, they'll burn everything. You don't know what they'll do." Leonard paused at the edge of the room. "Yes," he said. "I do." He turned off the lights, leaving only the glow from the heater. Ravel curled under the blanket. Her eyes slowly closed. Leonard sat down on his cot across the room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind tear through the outer vents. She was right. This changed everything. But for now, just tonight, she was alive. And he wasn't alone. Morning on Valkyris. 8 didn't look much different from night. Just a faint, colorless light seeping through cracks in the overhead bulkhead panels. The wind outside had calmed slightly, but the cold remained locked in the metal bones of the colony. A layer of frost had formed around the inside edges of the door, glittering faintly in the pale light. Leonard was already up, boots on, jacket zipped halfway, checking the perimeter sensors through a handheld monitor. The screen pulsed with green markers. No movement, no heat signatures, no drones. But that didn't mean much. Syndicate scouts often moved without signatures. Some were quiet enough to bypass proximity alarms entirely. He knew they'd come looking eventually, maybe days from now, maybe hours. He set the monitor down and turned toward the cot. Ravel hadn't moved much during the night. She lay curled under the blankets, one arm peeking out, hand resting open, relaxed. Her breathing was slow and even. A part of Leonard still didn't believe she was real. She looked out of place here, alien, fragile, barely alive, and yet her presence had already shifted the rhythm of the entire shelter. He poured hot water into a tin cup and slid it onto the metal table beside the cot. The scent of boiled roots and synth tea filled the space. Ravel's eyelids twitched, then slowly opened. She blinked, first at the light, then at him. "You're still here," she said, voice rough from sleep. "So are you." She sat up cautiously, pulling the blanket around her chest. Her hair fell across her face in a tangled curtain. He handed her the tea. She accepted it without a word and took a slow sip, eyes never leaving his. Leonard didn't ask how she slept. That kind of question felt useless in a place like this. "Temperature's dropping again," he said. "We'll need to reinforce the seals on the vents today, or it's going to get dangerous in here by nightfall." She gave a small nod. "I can help. You sure you're up for it?" "I wouldn't offer if I wasn't." There was no weakness in her tone. She meant it. Leonard studied her for a moment longer, then turned back toward the equipment shelves. "We'll start after you eat something." As she drank the tea, she finally looked around the shelter with clarity, taking in the organized chaos of tools, half-repaired parts, bundled wiring, and taped-up heater units. Her eyes paused on a photo stuck to the side of a tool chest. It showed a woman, human, dark-haired, standing beside Leonard on a ridge. She was smiling. Ravel didn't ask, but her eyes lingered. Leonard noticed. "My wife," he said quietly. "She was here during the riots. We were sent to restore environmental control systems. She didn't make it out." Ravel looked down. "I'm sorry. You didn't cause it." Still, the silence that followed was thick. After breakfast, reconstituted grain, old but edible, they got to work. Leonard handed her a thermal jacket. It was too big for her, but she zipped it up and cinched the belt tight around her waist. Her legs were still bare beneath the torn skirt, but she moved with purpose, ignoring the cold. They climbed onto the roof of the shelter using a side access ladder. Leonard moved first, checking for ice buildup along the seams. Ravel followed, barefoot on metal rungs. She didn't complain. While they worked, Leonard kept glancing toward the horizon, always scanning. "You said you escaped 3 days ago," he said, tightening a bolt on the vent housing. "How far did you walk?" "About 20 kilometers," Ravel answered without hesitation. "I followed the ridgeline. Slept in collapsed transport bays. Hid during daylight. You were being hunted? They always send someone. Or something." Leonard paused his work. "Did you see any drones?" "Not directly, but I heard one yesterday morning. Downwind." Leonard's jaw tightened. "We need to remove your chip." She froze. "I know it's there," he continued. "They all have them, buried in the spine, usually with a short-range locator beacon. If they get within scanning range." "I know," she interrupted. Her voice was low, controlled, but the fear in her eyes was visible now. "I tried cutting it out myself once," she added. "Didn't get far." Leonard crouched beside her on the rooftop. His gloves brushed snow from the vent pipe, but his focus stayed on her face. "I have the tools. When you're ready." She didn't answer, but her hand briefly touched the back of her neck, as if confirming the chip was still there. They finished sealing the vents and returned inside just as the wind began to rise again. Snow swirled past the window slits, the storm reforming. Back inside, Leonard laid out a surgical kit on the table. "You don't have to do this now," he said, "but if they get close enough to ping the beacon, they'll burn half this sector looking for you. If they don't find you, they'll assume I'm hiding you. Either way, this place goes up in smoke." Ravel stared at the tools. "Scalpel, probe, suture gel, Nerve suppressor. I'll do it, she said. But not yet. I need a few hours. Leonard gave a short nod and packed the tools away. They worked in silence for most of the afternoon. She helped him realign the water filtration lines, tightening seals and rewiring a corroded pump motor. She was skilled, her hands quick, her memory sharp. She'd done this kind of work before. At one point, he found her crouched near the burner, adjusting the heat settings. You know field stoves? I maintained 30 of them. Camp barracks. Overseer patrols ate first. If their meals weren't hot, we didn't get ours. Leonard didn't ask what happened if they complained. Later, as night settled again and the wind grew harsher, he handed her a clean thermal wrap, old but intact. She took it and went behind the fabric partition near the corner to change. Leonard sat near the heater, sipping reheated broth, listening. When she returned, her old wraps were gone. She wore his oversized shirt, sleeves rolled up, the thermal wrap cinched at the waist like a robe. Her hair was cleaner. Her skin no longer looked bloodless. She sat down beside him without asking. The silence between them was no longer heavy, just quiet. Finally, Ravel spoke. Why are you still here? Leonard looked at her. This place? Or this planet? Both. He thought for a long moment. I lost everything else, he said. Out here, at least I understand the rules. Fix what's broken. Stay out of the way. Survive. You don't miss people. I miss one. Ravel didn't press. She leaned back against the wall, pulling her knees up under the wrap. If you help me remove the chip, she said slowly, I'll be gone by morning. Leonard didn't look at her. You don't have to leave. I can't stay. Not asking you to. Just saying you don't have to go the second you're free. Ravel turned her head slightly. Her voice dropped. Why are you doing this? He shrugged, but the motion was small. Because someone should. And for the first time since she arrived, she smiled, barely. But it was real. The heater buzzed gently. Outside, the wind howled. But inside the shelter, for the first time in years, Leonard Thorne didn't feel like a man waiting to die. He felt like someone trying to keep another person alive. And that changed everything. The storm didn't ease. By morning, the outside temperature had dropped below survivable range. Frost spread across the inside walls in delicate veins, even with the heater running at maximum output. The vent seals held, barely, but every gust of wind made the structure groan like something wounded. Leonard woke to the soft sound of movement. Ravel stood near the corner sink, wrapped in a thermal cloak, quietly organizing the salvage crates. Her steps were careful, as if afraid to make noise. But when she turned and saw he was awake, she didn't stop. Just acknowledged him with a glance, then kept working. You sleep at all? He asked, sitting up and rubbing the side of his face. A little. Enough. She wasn't lying. Her color was better, her voice steadier. But there was still something in her expression, like she was waiting for something to snap. As if she didn't believe this quiet would last. Leonard pulled on his boots and walked to the table. The tools from yesterday were still packed neatly in their case. Is today the day? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, yes, before nightfall. That gave them maybe 8 hours, depending on visibility and power retention. He nodded once, not pressing her further. She came over and sat across from him. Her fingers played with the edge of the table, tracing the etched lines in the metal. He noticed her eyes shifting occasionally toward the perimeter monitor. You keep checking for drones, he said. Have you seen them before? I mean up close. Ravel hesitated. Twice. Once on Gyros Prime. Once on the southern flats of Atris. Same design, black casing, cylindrical core, rotor blades that stay retracted until mid-flight. Heat-seeking. Short-range shock weapons. Fast. Leonard leaned back slightly. That detail wasn't common knowledge. You were military? No, she said quickly. But I was bonded to a logistics officer for 5 years. I watched. I remembered everything. That explained the way she moved. Efficient, cautious, always assessing the environment. She wasn't a soldier, but she wasn't helpless either. He stood and walked to the storage locker, unlocking a hidden compartment. Inside was an old fusion scalpel, a neural disruptor wand, and an anesthetic injector. Low dose, barely enough for field use. We'll do this on the bench, Near the heating unit, he said. There's no medical bay here. Just make it fast, keep the bleeding low, and pray the chips not fuse deep. Ravel joined him. She didn't flinch at the sight of the tools. Where exactly is it? She pulled the collar of her shirt down and turned, lifting her hair. Just below the second cervical vertebra, a faint scar sat over Ray's skin, pale, hard-edged, with a metallic glint beneath. Leonard grimaced. They didn't even bother with the subdermal concealment. They don't have to. Most of us don't live long enough to notice. He took a breath. You ready? Yes. She sat down on the bench and bent forward slightly, arms resting on her knees. He cleaned the area carefully, applied the injector, then activated the disruptor wand. Her muscles twitched. She didn't make a sound. The scalpel passed through the outer skin with precision. Leonard worked quickly, his brow furrowed in concentration, fingers steady. A minute passed, then another. Blood welled slightly. Not too much. And then, metal. A curved chip, no larger than a grain of rice, embedded deep in the muscle. He clamped it, twisted, and pulled. The moment it left her body, a faint ping registered on the bench's signal monitor. Leonard froze. Signal just activated. They could track it now. Only if they're close enough to catch the spike. He dropped the chip into a sealed tin and slammed the lid shut. They both stared at it in silence. I'll dispose of it outside, deep in the East Trench. Burn it, she said. They use residual trackers. They'll read the frequency, even in pieces. He nodded again and sterilized the tools. Her back was bleeding, but slowly. He patched the wound with synth gel and covered it with a dressing pad. How's your vision? He asked. Stable. Dizziness? Numbness? No, just cold. She stood without needing help. That impressed him more than he admitted. The rest of the afternoon passed in quiet tension. Leonard walked the perimeter twice, checked the relay tower signal, still jammed, no new incoming transmissions. He loaded the sealed chip into an old recon drone and sent it away on a deadman flight route, south, toward a slag canyon, far enough that any trace would vanish before sunset. When he returned, Ravel was sitting on the cot, rubbing her shoulder. Her eyes met his. You believe in second chances? She asked. No. She tilted her head. Then why are you giving me one? I don't believe in them, Leonard said, pulling off his gloves and setting them down, but I've learned not to waste them when they show up. He sat beside her. She didn't move away. You want to leave? You can, he continued. I won't stop you. But if you stay, we've got rules. I figured. No lies. No leaving without warning. You hear something, anything, out of the ordinary, you tell me. No hero stunts. No martyr moves. I'm not trying to be a hero. Good. I've buried too many already. She looked down at her hands, folding them into her lap. You really think the syndicate will come for me here? They might. They might not. Depends how valuable you were. I wasn't. Then, they'll come out of spite. That made her laugh. Just once low and bitter. He didn't join her. His tone stayed flat. They don't like losing property. I'm not property. You're not. But they still think you are. A long pause settled between them. Finally, she leaned back, resting against the wall. I never asked your full name. Leonard Thorne. You have a family name. I used to have a family. Ravel didn't speak after that. But she didn't move away, either. As the hours passed and the wind picked up again outside, they sat together in the warmth of the tiny shelter, two people who should have never crossed paths. A reclusive human tech with nothing left to protect, and a fugitive alien woman who'd spent her life being owned, ordered, and silenced. And for the first time, neither of them felt alone. But just past the edge of the storm, beyond the range of their failing sensors, something moved in the white. Sleek, silent, black casing. A syndicate drone. It hovered above the snow for only a second before vanishing into the storm again, signal cloaked. It had locked onto a signature. A heat trail. Footprints. And it was not far. The wind screamed against the shelter walls. Inside, everything was quiet. Leonard stood near the signal monitor, arms crossed, watching the static roll across the screen. He tapped the side of the device again. No change. No new alerts. But something felt off. Too still, too quiet. Ravel sat by the workbench. tying her hair back with a strip of torn cloth. The patch on her back from the locator chip removal was clean dry. She moved slower now, controlled, deliberate, but she wasn't weak anymore. Leonard didn't look at her when he spoke. Something's wrong. She looked up, eyes sharp. Sensor. No signal. No interference either. Which means one thing. They're cloaked. Leonard nodded once, then crossed the room quickly. He pulled open a locked crate near the floor and retrieved a short-range scanner. Manual, unlinked. Old tech. No smart systems. Harder to spoof. He activated the device. Nothing at first. Then a flicker. Weak thermal distortion, maybe 200 meters out. Holding still. Then gone again. He lowered the scanner. It's here. Ravel didn't ask how close. She stood, crossed to the far wall, and unzipped the storage cabinet where Leonard had stashed his old breathing masks and outerwear. She pulled down a compact emergency pack and began checking its contents. Thermal blanket, flare pen, food capsules, coil battery. Leonard was already at the workbench, grabbing his sidearm and clipping 2 fresh cells into the housing. He shoved the weapon into a holster on his hip and glanced back at her. There's an old terraforming substation west of here. 5 clicks. It's shielded, buried. They won't be able to track us inside. You think we can reach it before they drop a ground team? We'll have to. Ravel didn't ask more. She just tightened the jacket around her waist and secured her boots, Leonard's spares slightly too big. She shoved her arms into the sleeves of his second coat and zipped it halfway. It hung loose on her, but she looked ready. Leonard slung a small pack over his shoulder and opened the emergency hatch behind the workbench, a narrow tunnel carved between service panels and pipework. He'd dug it himself 3 years ago in case things ever turned bad. Tonight they had. They moved fast, crawling through narrow shafts that led away from the main shelter. The metal was icy. Every scrape echoed. Leonard kept one hand on the pistol and the other guiding them forward. Ravel followed close behind, quiet as a shadow. After 20 minutes, they emerged into open air. The wind hit them instantly, sharp and punishing. Snow lashed their faces. Visibility was low, but Leonard didn't hesitate. He knew the route. He pointed west, across the ravine. They ran. The terrain was uneven, collapsed walkways, broken towers jutting from the snow like ribs. Ravel kept pace, boots slipping slightly, but never falling behind. Her breath came in short bursts. Leonard glanced back once. She nodded at him. Keep going. They didn't speak. Halfway across the ravine, Leonard heard it. A faint whir above them. Mechanical. Deliberate. He shoved Ravel behind a collapsed beam. They dropped into the snow and froze. Overhead, the drone passed. Sleek. Black. No lights. It hovered, scanning. Leonard held his breath. His hand brushed against Ravel's. She didn't move, but he could feel the tension in her fingers, coiled, ready. The drone hovered for a moment longer. Then it turned, moved south, disappeared. They waited 10 more seconds. Then Leonard pulled her up. Go, he said. Now. They reached the substation just after nightfall. A circular hatch buried beneath a half-collapsed tower. Leonard dug the snow away with his gloved hands until the rusted handle revealed itself. He twisted it hard. The hatch creaked open with a metallic groan. Inside, warmth. Residual heat from an old geothermal pump still pulsed faintly through the concrete walls. The lights flickered once, then stabilized. Emergency backups. Low red glow. They stepped in and closed the hatch behind them. Locked it. Only then did they breathe. Leonard dropped the pack. Ravel leaned against the wall and slid down, her back pressing into the metal, hair damp with snow, lips pale. He knelt beside her. You okay? She nodded once, barely. I'm not hurt. Leonard reached into the pack, pulled out a blanket, and wrapped it around her. She didn't resist when he pulled her closer. She leaned into him, not for warmth, just to stay grounded. He could feel her heartbeat against his ribs. We're safe here, he said. For now. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder. I wasn't going to come here, she whispered. He looked down at her. I was heading east, toward the trade ruins. But I saw the relay signal. It was weak, faded, still repeating. Every 4 seconds. Leonard blinked. I haven't touched that relay in over a year. I I thought maybe it was broken, but it was still calling. And I didn't want to die in the snow. Silence fell between them again. Then she said, I was the only one who escaped. For my transport, there were 7 of us. The others that didn't make it past the second night. Leonard didn't ask for details. He didn't need them. Instead, he reached over and pulled the heater coil from the pack. He activated it and set it between them. The soft red light warmed their hands. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then, softly, You still want to go? He asked. Ravel turned to him slowly. Her face was flushed from the heat. Her eyes tired but alert. I don't know yet. That's fair. He didn't move. She didn't pull away. They sat there, shoulder to shoulder, sharing one blanket, the red light flickering across their faces as the storm raged above them. And beneath it all, for the first time since she arrived, there was calm. But above ground, the drone had returned. It hovered near the shelter's ruins, scanning the wreckage. The heat's signatures were gone. The hatch was buried. It activated a long-range signal. And far away, on a drifting merchant cruiser, a new alert blinked. Asset missing, confirmed. Retrieval team authorized. The power coil died just after midnight. The heater clicked 3 times, then shut off, the red light beneath it fading into black. A soft hum vanished from the room, leaving only the sound of their breaths. Leonard leaned forward, pressing the back of his hand to the housing. Cold. Ravel pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Her skin was damp from melted snow, now drying into a chill. She didn't speak, but her eyes followed Leonard's every movement as he pried open the heater casing and checked the connector terminals. Burned out. No charge left in the battery cell. Backup's dead too, he said flatly. I've got one more coil, but it'll barely give us an hour. She nodded slowly. We'll ration it. Wait until sunrise. If we make it to sunrise. He didn't mean to say it that way. It just came out. Ravel didn't flinch, but she turned her head slightly, looking toward the hatch. They're here, aren't they? She asked. Leonard didn't answer. He didn't need to. Above them, silence had returned to the storm. No wind, no shifting snow, no drone sounds, just the quiet that usually came right before something worse. Leonard stepped to the far side of the room and opened the terminal panel. He connected a small screen to the external sensor feed. A signal spike pulsed faintly in the northwest quadrant. Human. Multiple heat signatures. He lowered the screen. They deployed a ground team. At least 3. Ravel stood now, the blanket still clutched around her but forgotten. How long do we have? Maybe an hour. Maybe less. Depends how well they know the terrain. Ravel took a slow breath. They'll sweep the towers first. Then the maintenance tunnels. They'll guess I went underground. They'll find a hatch eventually. Then cut through the lock. She looked at him. Then we don't wait. Leonard stared at her for a moment. She wasn't panicking. Not freezing up. Not looking to be saved. She was thinking. Focused. He grabbed the emergency bag, stuffed the last coil inside, and shouldered it. There's a secondary exit. South wall. Leads into a collapsed service corridor. Where does it go? Nowhere good. But it'll buy us time. He moved fast, pulling aside an old floor panel and exposing the access tunnel beneath. She dropped in first, landing softly on the maintenance grating. He followed and sealed the hatch behind them. The corridor was narrow, barely shoulder width, and low enough that they had to crouch. The air smelled of old rust and carbon dust. Ravel crawled ahead, using one hand to steady herself, the other pressed to the cold metal. Her breathing was shallow but controlled. Leonard followed close behind, watching their rear. They reached a rusted grate and pushed through into a deeper shaft, wider, older. The walls were slick with condensation. Every sound echoed. Their footsteps, their breaths. Then a light flickered above them. White, artificial. Leonard froze. He pushed Ravel against the wall and held her still. A red laser traced across the far corner. Then another. Syndicate units. Already inside the substructure. He grabbed her wrist. They ran. Down the slope, across a half-collapsed bridge, through a doorframe half-sunk into the snow. Gunfire echoed behind them. Short bursts, not aimed, just probing. They ducked into a narrow side room, slammed the hatch shut, and backed into the darkness. breathing hard. Too loud. Too fast. Leonard turned to speak, but stopped. Ravel was against the wall, chest rising and falling quickly, eyes wide. Not in panic, in pure alertness. Her pupils had narrowed. Her fingers twitched at her side. Her body leaned close to his, so close he could feel her breath against his jaw. "I know this place," she whispered. Leonard blinked. "What?" "This layout. The floor design. I clean a compound like this. South quadrant of Terravex, 12. Syndicate uses these layouts over and over. They copy blueprints. So, there's a tunnel ahead. Leads to a sealed power chamber. Old battery vault. No one scans it, it's lead-lined. If it's the same structure, it's our best shot." Leonard didn't question her. They moved fast. The path curved sharply, then opened into a room lit by faint ceiling glow. They ducked under a fallen beam, slipped through a collapsed panel, and found the vault hatch. Ravel keyed in a manual override. The panel blinked red, then green. They stepped inside. Leonard shut the door quietly and locked it. No lights inside. No signals. The air was musty. Dead power cells lined the walls like metal coffins. Ravel sat on one and exhaled hard. For the first time since they ran, she slumped forward, elbows on her knees, face in her hands. Leonard knelt in front of her. "You okay?" She didn't answer. Not right away. Then, "I always knew they'd find me. I just didn't think it would be so soon." "You think they'll stop?" "They don't stop. Ever." She looked up at him. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from the strain. Her voice was low, ragged. "They'll burn this whole sector to get me back. Not because I'm valuable, but because I left. And if I left, others might too." Leonard sat beside her. "You're not going back." Her gaze locked onto his. She didn't blink. "I can't let you die for me. I'm not planning to die." Silence. Then, softer. "I didn't ask for this," she said. "I know. You could have shut the door." "I didn't." He reached out slowly, brushing a strand of damp hair from her face. She didn't pull away. His fingers rested just long enough to feel her cheek warm under them. Neither spoke. Not until she leaned in, resting her forehead against his. Close. Still. No desperation. No sudden kiss. Just quiet contact. Raw, human real. "I don't know what this is," she whispered. "Me neither. But I trust you." Leonard closed his eyes briefly. "So do I." Outside, heavy footsteps moved through the tunnels. Searchlights swept over walls. But inside the battery vault, there was only silence and breath. Two people alive. For now. The silence didn't last. A distant thud shook the floor. Ravel's eyes snapped open. Leonard had already stood, weapon in hand, his body angled toward the vault door. Another thud came, closer, rhythmic, purposeful, like something heavy slamming against reinforced steel. "They found the hatch," Leonard muttered. "They're trying to breach it." Ravel pulled the emergency pack closer and checked its contents. No food, no heat, just a low-yield battery, a flare, and a multi-tool. Useless in a fight. She glanced at Leonard. He was calm, but the tightness in his jaw gave him away. His breath came slower than normal. Controlled. "How many do you think?" she asked. "Could be 2. Could be 6. Depend how much they want you." Another impact. Dust drifted down from a cracked ceiling panel. The vault walls shuddered slightly, and a faint creaking started in the hinge. Leonard looked around the room quickly. No escape tunnels. No back access. No vents. If we stay here, they'll cut through. If we run, we'll be out in the open. Ravel scanned the floor. Power conduits, maintenance panels, coolant valves, half of them dead. Then she noticed the warning stencil painted on the far side of the chamber. "Do not vent. Conduit chamber below." She pointed to it. "That subchamber, what is it?" "Old heat dispersal tunnel. Used to flush coolant into the lower reactor lines." "Still active?" "Doubt it. Still full of coolant?" Leonard blinked. Then checked the side terminal. Dust covered the display, but the pressure indicator flickered. Minimal charge remaining. "Enough for a flood," he said. She was already moving. "Help me open the valve. If we time it right, we can blind them with mist and cold shock." Leonard followed her lead, pulling the pressure release switch and angling the emergency crank until the valve seal twisted loose. A deep, groaning hiss started to build in the pipes. Cold mist began to leak into the edges of the floor. Then, the door shook again. A cutting torch ignited from the other side. The dull orange glow of plasma spread in a circle, burning through the lock housing. Now, she said. Leonard pulled the final release. The chamber floor vented downward with a roar, and a wall of pressurized mist shot up into the air like steam from a ruptured pipe. Visibility dropped instantly to near zero. The entire vault filled with biting cold and shimmering vapor. The door burst open. A figure stepped through, black armor, rifle raised, red visor blinking. But he paused immediately, blinded. Leonard fired. The first shot clipped the soldier's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Ravel grabbed a loose tool and hurled it toward the second, one entering behind him, smashing into the faceplate. Both dropped hard. No time to check if they were dead. Go! Leonard shouted. They rushed through the broken hatch and into the corridor. Another soldier was waiting near the left bulkhead. He raised his weapon. Leonard didn't stop. He shoved Ravel behind him and tackled the man straight into the wall. The rifle discharged once into the floor before Leonard slammed his elbow into the man's jaw and wrenched the weapon away. But the man struck back hard, a punch to Leonard's ribs, then another to his side. Leonard staggered, weapon falling from his hand. The soldier lunged again, and Ravel moved. She came from behind, slamming a scavenged steel pipe into the base of the soldier's skull. He went down fast. Leonard collapsed against the wall, gasping. Blood spread across his shirt, just below the ribs, shallow, but deep enough to hurt. Leonard, she knelt beside him. I'm fine, he hissed. Keep moving. If they regroup. No. Her voice was firm. No more running. You got me this far. I'm not leaving you behind. Leonard stared at her, breathing hard. He wanted to argue. He didn't. Ravel looked around, then dragged him into a side alcove, a broken access tunnel, barely wide enough for both of them. She pulled him in close, crouching against the wall. His breath hitched as she wrapped an old strap around his side, compressing the wound. You've done this before, he muttered. I watched enough people die not to forget how. Footsteps echoed down the main corridor. Searchlights swept by. They pressed closer. Leonard could feel her heartbeat against his arm, her breath on his neck. Ravel, he whispered. She didn't answer, just pressed her forehead to his temple, both of them listening to boots stomp past, missing them by inches. She whispered, barely audible, if we survive this, I'm not going anywhere. He turned his face toward her. Are you sure? I'm tired of running, and I'm tired of not choosing. Leonard swallowed hard. Then we get out of here. Together. She nodded. They waited until the noise passed, then slipped out and made their way through the broken auxiliary tunnel. It curved downward toward a collapsed service shaft. The snow had bled through in spots. The air was getting colder again. But behind them, no more sounds. No more pursuit. They emerged into the lower trench system, forgotten, buried, but still structurally intact. It would lead them out beyond the grid range. Leonard was limping. Ravel kept an arm around his side. He didn't resist. The snow outside was soft, falling quietly now. They stepped into it together, slow but steady. No words needed. They were still alive. And for the first time, that meant something more than survival. It meant they had each other. The wind had finally stopped. Leonard and Ravel stepped into the remains of an old relay station built into the side of a ridge. Its antennae had snapped long ago, but the reinforced structure held. No lights, no heat, but shelter. Enough. Inside, the air was dry. Dust hung in the shafts of daylight, breaking through fractured wall panels. A collapsed bunk lay against the far corner, half covered in debris. Leonard sat down slowly beside it, wincing as the movement pulled at the dressing across his ribs. Ravel dropped the emergency pack near the wall. Her hands moved quickly, lighting the portable coil heater and setting the last thermal blanket around them both. She didn't ask if he was all right. She already knew the answer. He looked worse than before. Pale, shaky, but alive. You should rest, she said quietly. I'll rest when we're sure they're not following. They won't. You don't know that. Ravel knelt beside him and opened a medkit salvaged from the relay storage. She cut away the old bandage and cleaned the wound carefully. The bleeding had stopped. The bruising hadn't. Leonard winced as the antiseptic stung. "You've done this before?" She nodded. "Too many times. First for others, later for myself." He looked at her, studying the curve of her jaw, the faint burn scar near her collarbone, the fresh scrapes on her knuckles. None of it took away from her beauty. If anything, it made it more real. She was flesh and willpower, no longer just someone surviving. "You saved my life," he said. Ravel met his eyes. "And you saved mine long before that." He didn't know what to say, so he didn't. The heater pulsed between them, casting soft orange light across the wall. She sat beside him now, pulling her knees close. Her jacket was open, revealing the underwraps she still wore beneath. Cleaner now, but worn thin. She didn't hide. She didn't shrink. Leonard broke the silence. "So what now?" Ravel took a breath. "We're past the syndicate's scan grid. If we stay hidden, move low, we could make it to the Southern Passage. From there, it's open territory. Old fringe colonies. No oversight." He nodded slowly. "We could disappear for good. We wouldn't be the first." Leonard looked down at his hands. "I can clean." They were shaking slightly. "I can be quiet," she whispered. Was he opened his door. Fatigue was catching somehow his life. "And what would we be?" Ravel tilted her head. "What do you mean? If we survive, if we disappear, were we then just fugitives with nowhere to go?" "No." She turned toward him. "We'd be people who made a choice." Leonard met her gaze. "For what?" "To stop running." Silence stretched between them. Then she reached for his hand. Held it. Not tentative. Not unsure. She made the choice for both of them. And this time, he didn't pull away. They sat there for a while. No words, no movement. Just warmth. Just the sound of old metal creaking above and wind brushing faintly through a cracked panel. Eventually, Leonard leaned back against the wall, eyes half closed. Ravel rested her head on his shoulder. "I don't know how to live free," she said quietly. "Then we'll figure it out together." She smiled. It wasn't wide. It wasn't bright. But it was the first real smile he'd seen from her. That night, they shared a meal from old ration packs. They reconnected a field radio to the internal grid of the station, not to call for help, but to listen. Static, faint transmissions, unimportant chatter. But for them, it was something alive in the silence. Ravel stood beside the console, adjusting the frequency. Leonard watched her from where he sat. Her silver-white hair caught the flicker of the firelight. Her silhouette was sharp against the dark. She turned. He stood, walked toward her, and wrapped his arms around her waist. She didn't flinch. She didn't question. Her hands came up, resting against his chest. They kissed, not in desperation, not from fear, just quiet certainty. It lasted as long as it needed to. When they parted, Leonard rested his forehead against hers. "No more hiding," he whispered. "No more cages," she agreed. They would leave in the morning. The road ahead was long. Their names would vanish into static. But that was the point. There would be no more syndicate, no more orders, no more bargaining for breath. Only freedom, only each other. And that was enough.